I know people can be harsh when it comes to stories about relationships falling apart, especially in the legal world. I've seen enough brutal comments on professional forums to last a lifetime. But I need to share what happened to me, hoping you might understand. I'm Marie, 30 years old, a senior associate at one of New York's top law firms. This past month has completely shattered my world, and I find myself needing an outside perspective on how to move forward. David and I had what I thought was the perfect marriage. 4 years of building a life together, supporting each other through everything. From career milestones to family drama, even that 3 month stint living with his parents while our house in the suburbs was being renovated. We were that couple everyone at the firm pointed to as relationship goals. Even during our worst arguments, we'd end up working things out over late night ice cream and terrible Netflix documentaries. That's what made his accusation of infidelity so devastating. He suddenly claimed he had evidence I was cheating, suggesting it was inevitable because I worked in a male-dominated legal department. This coming from the same man who used to proudly tell his investment banking colleagues how his wife was breaking barriers in corporate law. 2 weeks ago, the way it all unraveled still feels surreal. David came home looking completely destroyed while I was preparing his favorite pasta, that overpriced organic brand he always insisted was worth every penny. Instead of our usual dinner conversation about market trends and case law, he mumbled something about needing space and disappeared upstairs. I assumed he'd lost a major client or had a rough board meeting. He's always needed time alone to process setbacks before talking about them, so I gave him that space. If I had known what was actually going through his mind, maybe I could have prevented this whole nightmare before it spiraled out of control. The next morning, the next day, David was gone before dawn. Something unprecedented in our 4 years of marriage. Just a cold text saying he was running early for a client meeting. This from the man who never missed our morning coffee ritual with our matching Smeg cups that he'd insisted on buying from that overpriced homeware store in Soho. But then 3 days passed, and everything got worse. He'd stumble home after midnight, reeking of expensive scotch. This from a man who usually limited himself to a glass of wine with dinner. One night, he knocked over our wedding photos, the custom frames from that artisan we discovered in Brooklyn, shattering across our hardwood floors, and he just left them there. David started sleeping in our meticulously decorated guest room, the one we'd spent weeks perfecting with an interior designer for visiting executives and family. Now it became his fortress against me. I'd hear him come home late, grab his things from his walk-in closet, and shut that door without a word. Missing him at home was painful enough, but he even disappeared on weekends. The time we usually spent brunching at trendy spots and shopping at Whole Foods together. I kept waiting for him to snap out of it, but deep down, watching our carefully curated life together crumble felt like witnessing a slow-motion car crash. At the office, I wanted to talk to him to understand what was happening. But how do you confront someone who's turned into a ghost in your own luxury apartment? I decided to try our old lunch surprise routine, the one where I'd show up at his investment bank's office with his favorite sushi from that exclusive place in Tribeca. We used to do this every other week before all this started. He'd always light up seeing me walk through those glass doors with food from Nobu. His colleagues used to tease us about still being in our honeymoon phase. At David's office. So I left the office early, skipping a partner meeting and picking up his usual order, the ridiculously expensive omakase set he loves, complete with those specialty rolls he can never resist. But when I arrived at his sleek office building in the financial district, his executive assistant gave me some rehearsed excuse about David being too busy for lunch. Then, through the floor-to-ceiling windows of that trendy cafe across the street, I saw them both sitting there, David and his assistant, laughing like everything was normal. I stood there holding that $200 takeout bag, watching my husband actively avoid me while sipping artisanal coffee with his staff. Later that afternoon, I spent the whole drive home crying in my Tesla, parked in the underground garage of Whole Foods, the same one where we had our first date, because he claimed he needed help picking organic produce. That night, all I got was a text saying he was staying at a colleague's place to work on a major deal. The next morning, though, he finally showed up at our apartment. For a moment, seeing him walk in carrying a leather portfolio, I actually thought maybe it was about that joint investment account we'd been discussing. But no, right there in our living room, beside the Eames chair he'd insisted on buying, he dropped divorce papers on our custom coffee table, already signed with his Mont Blanc pen, just waiting for my signature. 4 years of marriage, of building a life in Upper Manhattan together, and he was ending it all with premium legal stationery that probably came from his bank's corporate law department. When I pressed him about why he wanted a divorce, he just sat there silently at first, staring at our skyline view. This man who used to spend hours discussing market strategies with me, who'd stay up all night debating legal precedents, wouldn't even meet my eyes. Then suddenly he exploded, saying he regretted ever marrying a lawyer and that I had destroyed his reputation in the financial sector. The confrontation. The worst part came next. He accused me of cheating with multiple senior partners from my firm. Me, who still keeps the receipt from our first dinner at Le Bernardin in my wallet. Me, who turned down a partnership track at a Silicon Valley firm last year because the commute would mean less time with him. For 4 straight days, I tried everything to prove my innocence. I offered him access to my entire digital life, my work email, my laptop, my phone with all those ridiculous couple selfies we took at every Michelin-starred restaurant we visited. I even suggested he talk to anyone at my firm. His supposed evidence? A collection of photos that made my completely normal professional interactions look suspicious. There was one of me hugging Kyle, our senior tax partner, at his retirement party. The same party David couldn't attend because of his important board meeting in London. Another showed me having coffee with Jeremy, my Harvard Law classmate, at our usual spot in Bryant Park. The photo was taken from this weird angle that made our casual discussion about merger regulations look intimate, mind you. Jeremy is the same guy who helped David plan his elaborate proposal at Per Se, and whose fiancé usually joins us for these coffee meetings. Looking at the evidence, the photos looked like they were deliberately taken to create scandal. But David, who knows every single one of these people, who's had power lunches with them at his bank's executive dining room, was suddenly seeing everything through a completely different lens. I actually laughed when he showed me these photos because the whole thing was so absurd. The Bryant Park picture. Jeremy's fiancée, Lauren, showed up literally 5 minutes later. We were just waiting for her because she was stuck in a conference call. Lauren and I even went shopping at Bloomingdale's afterward and bought matching Burberry scarves. And those office photos? I'm one of 3 female senior associates in a department of 20 people. Of course, I interact with male colleagues. Just last month, David was bragging to his banking colleagues about how I was handling major M&A cases and working directly with the managing partners. He used to be so proud of my career, even helped me prepare for big client presentations. Now suddenly every professional interaction was suspicious. It's like he forgot all those times he came to firm events and networked with everyone himself. The ultimatum. But nothing I said seemed to matter anymore. He just kept pushing those divorce papers toward me across our Italian marble coffee table, saying he wanted me out of his life. I showed him everything. My entire digital footprint, my call logs, my calendar full of litigation meetings. I even offered to call Lauren right then to confirm everything, but he'd completely shut down, like he'd already decided what to believe in his perfectly crafted narrative. Then came the final blow. He gave me 48 hours to vacate our penthouse apartment. The same $3 million apartment we'd spent months hunting for, where we'd stayed up all night debating between designer furniture pieces and arguing about the placement of our abstract art collection. Now he was threatening legal action if I didn't leave. 48 hours to prove my innocence, to save my marriage, and to somehow make sense of how my life had imploded so completely. How do you even start packing up 4 years of marriage in 2 days? The discovery. The whole time something about these photos felt off. They were too perfectly timed, too professionally angled, like someone was following me around waiting for any interaction they could manipulate. When I finally discovered who was behind it all, everything clicked into place. It was Sarah, David's supposed best friend from Yale. I found out by doing something I never thought I would: accessing his phone while he was in our master bathroom. In my defense, when your entire marriage is falling apart and you're about to be evicted from your own home, desperate times call for desperate measures. Plus, this was the same phone I used to help him set up, the one where we'd share memes about stock market trends and photos of luxury penthouses we dreamed of buying. Reading the messages. Those 5 minutes scrolling through his messages were enough to make my blood boil. There was Sarah, systematically poisoning David's mind against me, message after message questioning everything about my life. What kind of wife prioritizes partnership track over family? Don't you think it's suspicious she chose corporate law instead of something more feminine? She'd send these little comments daily, planting seeds of doubt between client meetings and market closings. The realization. The worst part? I used to invite Sarah to our dinner parties at Daniel. Tried to include her in our social circle because I knew how important she was to David. I even defended her when my law school friends said she seemed oddly possessive of him. Now here she was, methodically trying to destroy my marriage. And my husband was treating her words like they were Goldman Sachs investment advice. Confronting Sarah. After seeing those messages, I grabbed my car keys and drove straight to Sarah's brownstone, the one David helped her buy last year because that's what best friends do. But before I get into what happened there, let me explain why I wasn't exactly surprised that Sarah was behind all this. The tension between us goes back to when David and I first started dating. From day one, she made it painfully obvious that she disapproved of me. I still remember our first meeting at Le Pain Quotidien. I reached out to shake her hand, and she looked at me like I was wearing last season's Louboutins. Right in front of me, she asked David if he was really sure about dating someone from a public university. At our engagement party at the plaza, she spent the whole night making snide comments about how quickly we were moving. Even at our wedding at the St. Regis, she showed up late, gave this weird speech about how she'd always be there for David, and left early. Everyone in our social circle saw through her act except David. I always suspected she had feelings for him, but whenever I brought it up, David would just laugh it off and say they were like siblings who'd grown up summering together in the Hamptons. He'd tell me stories about their shared history at Yale, their internships at the same investment banks, and how she was just protective. Now I was seeing exactly how protective she could be. The warning signs. I should have seen this coming. The night before our wedding, she actually cornered David at our rehearsal dinner at Le Bernardin and told him he'd regret marrying someone from my background. David mentioned it casually the next morning while we were getting ready in our suite, laughing it off as classic Sarah being overprotective. I remember feeling uneasy, but pushed it aside because, well, it was my wedding day. 4 years later, here we are, her prediction becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy. Not because I did anything wrong, but because she'd been playing the long game, waiting for the perfect moment to reclaim her position in David's life. The confrontation at Sarah's. When I got to her brownstone, she initially pretended she wasn't home, real mature for someone who just orchestrated the destruction of my marriage. But the moment I mentioned David was divorcing me, that designer door flew open faster than you'd believe. The smug look on her face as she stood there, surrounded by photos of her and David from their Yale days. Seriously, who keeps that many photos of their friend? Made my skin crawl. Standing in her perfectly decorated foyer, I cut straight to the chase and asked her why she'd manipulated David with lies about me cheating. Her response? I'm just trying to save my best friend from a toxic relationship with someone beneath his social standing. Save him from what? Our plans to start a family? Our joint investment portfolio? She stood there in her Chanel suit, acting all righteous, like she was doing David some kind of favor by destroying our marriage. I kept trying to explain to Sarah that her evidence was just normal moments from my professional life twisted to look suspicious, but she wasn't having it. She actually stood there and told me I should just let David go back to his real social circle, like she was doing everyone a favor. The weird part was how she kept referring to their future together. Not his future, their future. When I finally asked her straight up if she had feelings for my husband, she got defensive. He's like my brother, she said, but the way she practically slammed her restoration hardware door in my face said otherwise. This is the same woman who cried at our wedding. Definitely not happy tears. And now she's orchestrating its end. One last attempt. Back at our penthouse, I tried one last time with David. The conversation still replays in my head like a bad movie scene. I asked him why he never once came to me with his doubts, why he let Sarah feed him these stories without even questioning them. His response? I trust Sarah more than you. She understands our world better. Just like that, 4 years of marriage meant less than his college friend's social circle validation. The mystery woman. Now I'm sitting here in our apartment. Well, I guess it's his apartment now, with Louis Vuitton suitcases half packed and 24 hours left before I have to leave. That's when I noticed something odd about Sarah's recent Instagram stories. She kept tagging someone named Emma in her private posts. The same Emma who suddenly started appearing at all the high-end restaurants and social events Sarah frequented. Through my legal network, I discovered Emma wasn't just any random socialite. She was Sarah's cousin, who had recently moved to the city. And she was pregnant. Suddenly, all these puzzle pieces started falling into place. The rushed divorce, Sarah's increased presence in David's life, the constant undermining of my character. It all made sense if they were setting up Emma to be David's next wife, complete with a convenient pregnancy story to trap him into marriage. The revelation. I did something slightly insane. I had my firm's private investigator follow them. Yeah, I know how this sounds, but I needed proof. Instead of going home one night, Emma went straight to Sarah's brownstone. The pie managed to record their conversation through the garden window. David needs to believe it's his, and the timeline will work perfectly, and his inheritance will secure our future. The irony would be laughable if it wasn't my life falling apart. My marriage was ending because I had male colleagues, while my husband was being set up as part of an elaborate inheritance scheme. I'm sitting here in my home office, surrounded by case files and divorce papers, trying to decide my next move. The same office where I've won major cases and built my career, now becoming my war room for the biggest case of my life. Exposing this fraud while protecting my reputation in the legal community. Update 2 weeks later. Back with an update after the most intense 2 weeks of my legal career. First, thank you all for the overwhelming support in my DMs, especially to the fellow lawyer who sent me that care package with Dom Perignon and Godiva chocolates. You're a lifesaver during these 3 AM strategy sessions. I'm currently staying at Olivia's luxury condo in Tribeca. She's been incredible through all this. When I showed up at her door late at night with 3 Rimowa suitcases and ruined Chanel makeup, she just pulled me into a hug and had her housekeeper prepare the guest suite. She's even helped me start hunting for a new penthouse. Though honestly, I still can't believe I'm apartment hunting in Manhattan again. The unexpected encounter. Here's where things get interesting. And by interesting, I mean straight out of a corporate espionage thriller. I had to return to our apartment to collect my remaining files and electronics, because there's only so much you can pack when your husband gives you 48 hours to vacate your entire life. As I was walking up to the building, I saw Sarah leaving with Emma, both looking suspiciously comfortable in what was supposed to be my home. Back at the penthouse. Going back into that apartment felt like entering a hostile takeover meeting. David wouldn't even look at me. The same man who used to send me Bloomberg updates from his office upstairs when we were both working from home. I tried keeping it strictly professional, just there for my legal documents, but I couldn't help noticing Emma's Hermes bag casually placed on our Noguchi coffee table, like she was already marking her territory. 3 days later, Olivia came back from lunch with news. She'd seen David and Emma getting cozy at Le Coucou, the same restaurant where we'd celebrated our last anniversary. They looked comfortable together, like this had been going on for quite some time. The divorce papers weren't even filed with the court yet, and here he was, already parading around with his next target. The investigation continues. That night, I headed to Dean and DeLuca, trying to distract myself with overpriced comfort food. Instead, I ran into David with Emma at the wine section. My legal training kicked in, and I found myself discreetly following them. Not my proudest moment, but desperate times call for desperate measures. They ended up at Madison Square Park, where David had proposed to me during the Winter Light Festival. And there they were, looking cozy on the same bench where we used to share lunch breaks between court appearances. I don't remember running away, just ended up back in my Audi, trying to steady my breathing. The confrontation. I couldn't leave it alone, though. I used Olivia's phone, since David had blocked mine, very mature for a little VP at an investment bank, and called him about Emma. His response felt like another closing argument against me. He was actually proud to tell me he was dating her, claiming she was helping him heal from his trauma. Trauma from what? Our Sunday brunches at 11 Madison Park? The truth emerges. She's Sarah's cousin. That's right. While I was being accused of professional misconduct, Sarah was playing matchmaker with her cousin. David had the audacity to call it karma, like somehow him jumping into a new relationship with a social climber before our divorce was even filed was justified because of things I never did. The same man who couldn't handle me having coffee with male colleagues was now dating his best friend's cousin, who conveniently appeared right when our marriage started falling apart. After that call, I swore I was done with David and his Upper East Side drama, deleted his number, unfriended his social circle on LinkedIn, the whole post-breakup protocol. But then my pie uncovered something that changed everything. Emma wasn't just pregnant. She was part of an elaborate scheme to access David's inheritance from his grandfather's hedge fund. The rushed divorce, the quick new relationship, the constant social media presence. It all made perfect sense if Sarah and Emma needed a clean break from my marriage to execute their plan. The final pieces. Through my legal contacts and the PI's surveillance, I uncovered their entire plan. Sarah and Emma were deeply in debt after a failed luxury boutique venture. Their solution? Use Emma's pregnancy, which was real, but from her ex-fiancé, to trap David into marriage and gain access to his $50 million trust fund inheritance. The evidence mounts. The PI caught their entire conversation on tape, discussing timeline manipulation, inheritance clauses, and how to pressure David into a quick marriage. I sat in my temporary office at Olivia's place, listening to these recordings, feeling a mix of vindication and disgust. All those times Sarah criticized my gold digger background, and here she was, orchestrating an actual financial scam. Taking action. With the evidence in hand, I had two choices: use it for revenge or handle it professionally. I chose the latter. I compiled everything: the recordings, financial records, text messages, and had my firm's senior partner present it to David's bank's board of directors. Not out of spite, but to protect both David and his family's assets from fraud. The aftermath. The response was swift. The bank's compliance department launched an internal investigation. Sarah's connection to several questionable investment deals came to light. Emma disappeared back to Connecticut. David finally saw the truth. Present day. Now I'm in my new penthouse in Chelsea, unpacking my life into a space that's completely mine. David's been calling nonstop, leaving messages about reconciliation and how he should have trusted me. The same man who wouldn't believe his wife of 4 years now wants to rebuild trust after his perfect social circle turned out to be a fraud scheme. Yesterday, his family's lawyer reached out, thanking me for protecting their interests. Apparently, Sarah and Emma had already begun manipulating other aspects of the family's business ventures. My actions didn't just save David, they protected his entire family's legacy. But here's my dilemma. David wants to reconcile. He keeps sending elaborate apologies and promises of change. The same man who questioned my integrity based on office photos now wants me to forget how quickly he discarded our marriage. Sure, he was manipulated, but doesn't his immediate distrust say everything about our foundation? I'm sitting here in my new home office, surrounded by case files and a brighter future, finally understanding that sometimes the best revenge isn't making your enemies suffer. It's proving your worth and walking away with your dignity intact. I've got a corner office waiting for me at the firm, a partnership track that's clearer than ever, and most importantly, my self-respect. Still, I've got one question for you all. Would you take back someone who trusted their college friend more than their spouse? The man who planned a future with me turned out to be someone who'd throw it all away based on manufactured evidence. But he was also my best friend for so long. What would you do? Though honestly, my new view of the Manhattan skyline and that partnership offer are looking pretty good right now.